What were her findings? That's my question.
Well,
what
she
did she
brought a
learn?
daisy, which is super important. It shows you how quick the flight was. The dead daisy that's like snipped from its life source was still alive or still vibrant.
Oh, wow. What a valiant explorer.
Katie!
She picked the flower and then she kissed the earth. Okay.
There's 2 scientists who nobody cares to remember their names because the other 3 women were the fiancée of Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey's best friend Gayle King, and Katy Perry.
What she said in an interview with Elle magazine a few days earlier, quoting her directly, this is what she said, quote, "Space is gonna finally be glam. Let me tell you something. If I could take glam up with me, I would do that. We're gonna put the S in astronaut. Yes, we're gonna put the S in astronaut." So we went from one small step for man to putting the S in astronaut in the span of just a couple of generations.
6 celebrities, 1 phallic rocket, 11 minutes of airtime, and a media circus so loud you'd think we just colonized Mars. But no, all we really witnessed was a billionaire joyride packaged as feminist space history. Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez, better known as Jeff Bezos' fiancée, just blasted off with Blue Origin and returned from space acting like they solved quantum gravity. And the worst part? The world clapped like trained seals. The media called it historic.
But according to the media, it was more than just fun. It was somehow, some way, historic. Headlines across the corporate media trumpeted the news. Vanity Fair declared, Lauren Sanchez, Katy Perry, Gayle King, and their historic all-women's space flight land safely. People reported, Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez go to space and back in historic all-female Blue Origin flight. NPR says Katy Perry, Gayle King, and others reflect on their brief but historic trip to space. Space.com. Katy Perry and Gayle King launched to space with 4 others on historic all-female Blue Origin rocket flight. And many other headlines use this language.
Twitter turned it into a meme buffet. And somewhere, actual female astronauts who spent months orbiting Earth in microgravity were quietly rolling their eyes. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about how this 11-minute flight, yes, 11, became the most overhyped PR stunt in cosmic history, and why Katy Perry is out here dropping flower metaphors like she unlocked the secrets of the universe after floating for less time than it takes to order Uber Eats. But stay with me, because what started as a space selfie session turned into a viral moment featuring Joe Rogan, virtue signaling interviews, and a lesson in how fame now travels faster than light.
Now, so they go up there and they float for like 10 minutes?
At least.
And then they come down.
Let's not minimize this.
No, I know.
It's
a big deal.
Let's celebrate female astronauts.
And because they were
did it.
united.
Because a lot of men astronauts, they have to go to school.
Right.
They have to learn how to be a pilot first. Then they have to join the Air Force or the Navy. And then they get appointed by NASA.
That's right.
And then they go to space. You know?
And there has been, that's the other thing, there has been female astronauts.
Let's not minimize this. Let's not minimize this.
Or at least faster than common sense. Let's break it down. Blue Origin's shiny toy rocket takes off from West Texas. The passengers? A hand-picked group of celebrity women with 0 astronaut training, no mission objectives, and 1 goal: look fabulous while pretending to break barriers. The whole trip? A suborbital hop. They went up, floated for a few minutes, and came down. The space equivalent of jumping on a trampoline and calling it Olympic gymnastics.
Let's see, how high did they go up there?
They go above that line. It's called like the Carmen line or something.
So the space shuttle goes.
They went a little higher than that Rocket Man documentary. That guy who shot himself up in a rocket. They went like a few feet higher than that guy.
Are they even like technically actually in space?
I think that's where it floats. That's the line.
62 miles.
Kilometers.
Okay, 62 miles, dude. I drive that in an hour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's, by the way, I agree with you.
It's not that far. That's not even here to San Antonio.
Still, the media didn't miss a beat. They called it groundbreaking, pioneering, empowering. Headlines gushed about an all-female crew making history, which sounds impressive until you realize they were basically glorified tourists in a flying soda can. Even Blue Origin leaned into the narrative, branding the flight as some bold new frontier. But here's the thing. It was 11 minutes. No docking with the ISS, no spacewalk, no scientific payload, just float, pose, return, all while the press fawned like this was the moon landing 2.0. And that's when it started to feel less like progress and more like the world's most expensive influencer collab. Let's talk about the chosen few. Gayle King, talk show royalty. Katy Perry, pop star turned space philosopher. And Lauren Sanchez, media personality, helicopter pilot, and conveniently engaged to Jeff Bezos.
You know, it's so funny. She said she's heard from women and girls who have said to her, I didn't realize this is something I could do. You know how I know that didn't happen, Megan? Because it's not something they could do, because they're not friends with Jeff Bezos, right?
And that last one, kinda important, because nothing screams merit-based, like the richest man on Earth buying his fiancée a seat on a rocket he paid for. If that's not the peak of billionaire privilege, I don't know what is. No shade to their accomplishments back on Earth, but in space? None of these women trained as astronauts, no flight simulation, no survival drills, no zero-G acclimation, just designer jumpsuits and a photo op countdown. The only thing they had to navigate was the staircase to the capsule door. Meanwhile, thousands of engineers, scientists, and pilots, many of them women, spend years trying to earn a chance to touch the stars. These women skipped the line because clout. This wasn't a mission, it was a spectacle. And then there's Katy Perry. Oh, Katy. Post-flight, she emerged not with insights about orbital mechanics or the overview effect, but with a tale about a daisy? Yes, a literal flower. Perry described how this daisy, detached from its roots, still looked vibrant in zero gravity, as if it had whispered universal secrets to her soul. Suddenly, she was the Daisy Llama floating on enlightenment and Instagram quotes. She told the media she felt universally connected to love and that the experience changed her forever. Which is cute until you remember she was in space for less time than one of her own concerts. The internet, of course, did what it does best. Roasted her. She has songs longer than her flight. She saw a flower in zero-G and thought she was Einstein. And my personal favorite, she came back with more quotes than Neil Armstrong. But to Katy, it was profound. To everyone else, it was cringe wrapped in cosmic glitter. Enter Joe Rogan, the man who treats no celebrity sacred and space tourists the least of all.
I will never be the same. I mean, when you get up there and you see the Earth, and it's so beautiful, and it just fills the screen, and it's not just your window, it's like everybody's window, and there's no boundaries, there's no border, there's just Earth. Wow. And it just fills the screen. And when you get up there astronaut. And you see the Earth, and it's so beautiful, and it just fills the screen.
Is it what you expected?
No.
Better?
Oh, yeah. I don't think you can describe it, because, you know what I was saying, it was like quiet, but then also really alive. And you look at it and you're like, we're all in this together.
You mentioned this was prior to going up. You said that you needed to go to space to heal. I know you're only a few minutes removed from this incredible experience. Do you feel healed? Now you are officially an astronaut.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel?
I feel super connected to love.
On a podcast episode, Rogan casually joked that if Katy Perry started singing Firework inside the capsule, he'd be the first one opening the hatch. Boom viral, the internet exploded. Memes, reactions, think pieces, you name it. Of course, the outrage machine kicked in. Accusations of misogyny, sexism, and punching down. But here's the thing. Rogan has roasted every space tourist regardless of gender. Remember when he mocked William Shatner for crying after his flight? Equal opportunity, mockery. What made this different wasn't the joke. It was the absurdity of how serious the media took a glorified joyride. Rogan's punchline wasn't an attack on women. It was an attack on the delusion that this trip deserved a Pulitzer. And honestly, the viewers got it. Engagement spiked, memes multiplied, and for a moment, clarity pierced the stratosphere of celebrity fluff. Now, let's shift focus from the rocket ride to the people who should be getting the spotlight. Real women in STEM. While Katy Perry was waxing poetic about floating daisies, women like Christina Koch and Jessica Meir were conducting spacewalks and experiments aboard the International Space Station. They didn't just float for 4 minutes. They spent months in orbit, pushing the boundaries of human endurance, battling vertigo, and coming back physically wrecked from the experience. You won't find them on magazine covers, no Oprah specials, no champagne toasts on touchdown, just grit, silence, and science. And that's the problem. This Blue Origin trip wasn't about honoring women in space. It was about pretending to. The media ignored the women who earned their way through sweat, study, and sacrifice, and handed the spotlight to celebrities who treated space like an amusement park ride. One group made history, the other made headlines. Guess which one gets more views? Let's talk numbers. Rumors peg each seat on this Blue Origin flight at several $1 million apiece. Multiply that by 6, and you're looking at the kind of money that could fund scholarships for thousands of underprivileged students, or keep a small STEM lab running for a decade. Instead, it funded a 10-minute joyride so famous people could post their zero-gravity selfies on Instagram. We're not knocking the idea of private space travel. Done right, it can open doors for future innovation. But what we are knocking is the hypocrisy. The press called this a step forward for humanity, but let's be real, it was just the soft launch of celebrity space tourism. No mission, no science, no benefit to society, just clout in a capsule. Blue Origin didn't launch astronauts, they launched influencers. You know what's wild? The way this whole event was wrapped in a glittery bow of empowerment. First all-female crew, the headlines screamed. Women conquering space, the interviews echoed. But here's the truth. Representation without meaning is just noise. These weren't astronauts. They didn't undergo training. They didn't study orbital mechanics or learn how to fix a busted airlock. They were passengers, not pioneers. And framing them as heroines of space exploration diminishes the very real achievements of women who've spent their lives in aerospace and astrophysics. It's not anti-woman to say that. It's anti-bullshit. Because if girl power means strapping on a designer jumpsuit and floating for a few minutes while the media throws confetti, then maybe we need to redefine what power actually looks like. And just when you thought this ride couldn't get more tone-deaf, the environmental speeches started. Fresh off their carbon-spewing rocket trip, several of the passengers gave teary-eyed tributes to Earth's thin blue line. The delicate atmosphere that protects all life. Beautiful words, sure, but maybe save the sermon until after you don't scorch a hole in the sky with your private combustion-fueled getaway. Space launches are not green. In fact, each one dumps more carbon into the atmosphere than your gas-guzzling uncle does in a year. But that didn't stop these same celebrities from returning to Earth and doing interviews about planetary awareness. The irony is so thick, you could lather it on toast. Environmentalism isn't a vibe, it's a responsibility. And it's hard to take that message seriously when it's coming from people whose rocket ride burned more fuel than a small town uses in a week, just so they could post, feeling humbled on their stories. After the capsule touched down, the real show began. And not because anyone discovered alien life, it was because the post-flight interviews sounded like a mashup between a TED Talk and a Whole Foods essential oils aisle. Katy Perry declared she was universally connected to love. One passenger spoke of seeing the Earth as a living entity, and the whole thing felt like a guided meditation session hosted by Gwyneth Paltrow. But instead of enlightenment, all we got were fluffy buzzwords floating in zero gravity. There was no science, no insight, no mention of orbital velocity or planetary dynamics. Just vibes, man. Spiritual, sparkling, Instagrammable vibes. And let's not forget the daisy. Somehow, a flower floating in space became the symbol of this awakening. Meanwhile, actual scientists are back on Earth trying to figure out how to shield spacecraft from deadly radiation. But sure, tell us more about your flower. Of course, no PR-fueled event is complete without a media follow-up. And who better to orchestrate that than Oprah? Word on the street is that Oprah teased a sit-down special, complete with soft lighting, inspirational soundtracks, and at least one tearful close-up. The narrative: women reaching for the stars. The reality: a billionaire's inner circle taking a joyride while the media treated it like Apollo 13. This isn't cynicism, it's observation. And it's not that these women don't have a right to go to space. They do. But when you wrap a tourist trip in empowerment packaging and sell it as a milestone for womankind, that's where the line gets crossed. Because behind the scenes, women at NASA, ESA, and JAXA are putting in real work. They just don't have publicists. But don't worry, the capsule's next passenger list is reportedly being curated as we speak. And you can bet it'll include even more A-listers, more hashtags, and a fresh round of branded merch. Now, here's where things get even juicier. You'd think the emotional monologues and spiritual reflections would be the viral moments, right? Nope, the data tells a different story. The spikes in viewership, they happened during Rogan's joke, the sarcasm, the memes, the skepticism. Audiences didn't want poetic space ramblings. They wanted someone to call out the absurdity, someone to pop the overinflated balloon and say, wait, is this really what progress looks like? And that's telling. In an era dominated by attention economics, sincerity takes a backseat to snark. Real struggle gets buried under feel-good narratives. And the people doing real work, the ones with PhDs and pilot hours, they get lost in the algorithm because they aren't trending. But you know what is trending? Hot takes. And the truth, when it's dressed in sarcasm and served with a wink, travels faster than a Bezos rocket. So here we are, a rocket launched, cameras rolled. The capsule coasted through suborbital space for 11 minutes. And somehow, that became the story of the decade. Katy Perry came down spiritually reborn. Lauren Sanchez floated like it was a spa day in the stars. Gayle King got another headline. And Jeff Bezos got to polish his brand while the rest of us watched, jaw slightly dropped, popcorn in hand. Meanwhile, women who've trained their whole lives to break through the actual space industry, they're back at work. No headlines, no press junkets, just discipline, silence, and science. And that's the punchline. In a world where Hollywood turns everything into spectacle, even space isn't safe. The final frontier? More like the final photo shoot. Progress isn't measured in rocket launches. It's measured in what you do with that access. But hey, if you enjoyed this cosmic roast of celebrity space tourism, go ahead and smash that subscribe button faster than Katy Perry found cosmic love. Drop a comment. Would you float in a billionaire's rocket for 10 minutes if it meant you got to do a press tour afterward? Or would you rather stay grounded and watch this absurdity unfold from a safe distance, preferably with a cold drink and a raised eyebrow? Either way, stick around. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, Hollywood never rests, and neither will we.